The Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences.
Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment.
We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you. Welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. I am your co-host, Liz.
And I'm your co-host, Natalie. And tonight we have Emily on from Pennsylvania. She is a mother of 5, soon to be 6, and she is going to share her story with her first birth. Thanks so much for coming on tonight, Emily.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about you and your family, and then we can go into the stories.
Yeah, I'm married. We've been married for 10 years. We have 5 kids currently. I have 4 daughters. My daughters are 8, 6, 4, and 3. And then I have 1 son and he's 1. And we are currently, I'm almost 17 weeks pregnant, with another son. So we're really excited. He'll be born around November-ish. So.
Oh, 4 girls.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Amazing. At least you can just do some hand-me-down clothes.
Oh my goodness. All the hand-me-downs.
So if you want to share a little bit about your pregnancy with your first daughter.
Yeah, my pregnancy went really smooth. You know, we had no issues starting out. You know, it was like a pretty normal, typical pregnancy. When I was 36 weeks, me and my mom went to the Bust-Eye Apple Festival, which is basically, you know, one of those apple festivals. You just kind of walk around, buy some candy apples, that kind of thing. And I just was not feeling good. You know, I kept telling my mom, I don't feel good. I ended up sitting down, crisscross applesauce in the middle of the sidewalk, and people are having to walk around me. And I, you know, went to the bathroom and I was noticing I was having a little bit of bleeding. But I had just had an internal checks and they told me that could happen. So I didn't think much of it. And so I just tried to keep going. And finally I told my mom, I've got to go home. You know, I don't feel good. So I went home and I was talking to my husband and I was like, you know, I'm having some bleeding. And he's, you know, very much a rather be safe than sorry kind of a guy. So he asked me to call my doctor. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to because I know what they're going to say. They're going to tell me to come in. And I was like, everything's fine. And he's like, you should call. And we had an appointment the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, I'm just going to wait until then. He's like, yeah, you're going to call. So I called and you know, they said, you know, we want you to come in anytime there's bleeding. And I knew that was going to be the case. So it's about like 40 minutes to the hospital. So we drove up, you know, and we got there and it was super quick. You know, they checked me out. And I was still having bleeding at the time, but it's not a lot. And so they were kind of like, you know, we can't really find anything wrong. We're going to go ahead and send you home. And I was mad at this point, you know, I'm like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have come. And now I have to drive 40 minutes home and then come back here first thing in the morning. But I'm getting dressed and the doctor knocks and she comes in and she's like, hey, I just really don't feel comfortable sending you guys home today. She's like, I'm going to go ahead and admit you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that either. So they take me up and they get me all hooked up like with the belly monitors and stuff. And we weren't up there very long when they kept losing my daughter's heart rate. And so they'd come in and they'd adjust it. And they're like, oh, she's really active. You know, they're kind of blaming losing her heart rate on her being active because they had no idea what was going on. So that went on for about 3 times. And then the 4th time, the nurse comes in and she cannot find her heart rate at all. You know, she's taken the monitor all over and, you know, was coming up with nothing. And, you know, all of a sudden she just kind of stood back and I could kind of see she was looking a little bit worried. And my doctor comes in and she's like, you need to pull the alarm. And the nurse just kind of stood there. And so I remember vividly her like pushing the nurse out of the way and she reaches across me and she pulls the chain behind you that sets off the alarm. And she takes my blankets off, and I was just covered in blood. Blood was like dripping off the bed. And they told me later it's probably because I was in shock that I didn't realize I was bleeding. My body had kind of gone into shock a little bit. And they had told me before too, usually with a placenta abruption, you experience like a lot of like abdominal pain. And I really didn't experience much of that at all. I just felt unwell. But once she pulled that, my room just was like immediately filled with tons of doctors. And she was handing me a clipboard, telling me I was going to have an emergency C-section and I need to sign it right now. And my hand's shaking. So I'm trying really hard to sign my name. And I remember, after I got that sign, I'm trying to find my husband through the multitude, it seemed like, of doctors. And I could just barely see him. And I see him, he's like tearing up and he's going, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And so they just wheeled me out and left him there and took me in. And basically they had a mask. They put it over my face. And I remember the doctor standing over me with a scalpel or whatever, ready to cut my daughter out. And there's another nurse beside me rubbing my leg, telling me, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And then I went to sleep. But my husband, from his point of view, he was left alone in the labor room while I was having the C-section, and he talks about like how scary that was. He's left in this room. There's blood on the floor. He has no idea what's going on. And he said like they were probably gone. He said probably no more than like 15 minutes before they came back. And a nurse came in and said, "Hey, you have a beautiful baby girl. She was born. It's great news." And she left. And he said probably not even 5 minutes later, 2 nurses came back in and they told him that our daughter Quinn's lungs and her stomach were filled with blood. And he kept asking if they're going to be okay, if she was okay. And, they were like, "We don't know at this point. We're going to take her to the NICU and we're going to see what we can do." So and he was completely alone. And I can't imagine, like, I almost feel like from his perspective, it's worse than from mine. I was unconscious. So I didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff he had to deal with.
Yeah.
But they brought my daughter to him in one of those incubator things before she went to have her tubes and everything put in. And he was allowed to stick his finger in and touch her. So I wake up in that time and I remember them telling my husband that, I wasn't going to remember anything from the time I was put under, but I remember everything. Like I remember every moment. And it was like that for me with my wisdom teeth too. I remembered everything after waking up from anesthesia. So it just affects me different, I guess. But I remember waking up and I was in tons of pain. They said something to me about how when you're under like that, or the way that they put me under, they couldn't give me pain medication until I woke up or something like that. So I was in a ton of pain. And I remember asking them, I remember asking them if my daughter was okay. And, the nurses just couldn't answer me. So it was just kind of heart-wrenching. As they're wheeling down me the hall, I kept saying, "Is my daughter okay?" And they, they weren't allowed to say one way or the other, I guess. So I finally got into my recovery room. And I remember seeing my husband, he's sitting in his chair with his head in his hands, just looking pretty distraught. So I'm immediately thinking, oh no, it didn't go well. But I remember him finally coming over to my bed and I was like, how is she? And he's like, "She's alive." And so that for me was like the first moment, like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. And he was like, "Yeah, she's alive. She's in the NICU. They've told me she's very sick. So it's going to be some time before we can, see her a lot." So once they finally got me back into my like the typical mother baby suite. They had me hooked up to a blood pressure monitor because my blood pressure was all over the place. And people were allowed to come in and see me. My dad kept setting off my alarm because he kept making me cry. So he kind of got banned from my room for a while. But I went the first night without seeing her. I know other people were allowed to see her once she was stable. But the second day, they wheeled me down in my bed, and I was allowed to like reach over and touch her. I wasn't allowed to hold her yet. The nurses told my husband's uncle that she went in as the sickest baby in the NICU, and by the next day, she was the healthiest. So that was something we were super thankful for.
That's amazing.
Yes, it was. It was a true miracle for sure. So I was sent back to my room, and I had a lot of recovering to do as well. But the next day I was allowed to hold her, which was pretty awesome because she did so much. She improved so much over that night that we were finally able to touch her more and hold her more. But I remember seeing my husband with her because he had been in her room taking care of her while I was recovering. And, I was just so jealous of him because he's going over, he's changing her diaper. He doesn't seem scared of her at all. And, he just seems so confident with her. And I remember I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm scared. But and I felt so jealous that he had already had that bond with her.
Yeah.
And he's still her favorite. So, but, I went back to, and I was sent home after 3 days. So we were home for 3 days without her. And that was incredibly tough. We were first-time parents. We were so excited. We had this room set up, her bassinets all set up, because first-time parents, we were excited. We were getting that stuff all set up nice and early, which thank goodness we did. But we were home 3 days without her. And we were driving back and forth to the NICU to be with her, during the days, and at nights we didn't have her. But then we got to spend 2 nights in the nesting rooms, which was really nice because it helped us to feel a little bit more like her parents. We always said that she felt like the hospital's baby, We got to go visit the hospital's baby sometimes. Yeah. And so in the nesting room, we actually felt like, oh my gosh, we're allowed to take care of her. But we were supposed to only stay there 1 night. And then the next morning, we were supposed to be allowed to take her home. And so the doctor came to do her checks. And while the doctor took her, we got ourselves all packed and we're like standing by the door with our backpacks on, like, let's go. And they came back in and told us that we couldn't go home yet, that she wasn't quite ready. So then, that was devastating. We were absolutely heartbroken. But it ended up only being 1 more night. And then we were able to take her home. But even once we got to take her home, I was so scared. Every little sound that kid made, I was jumping out of bed, just like on pins and needles all the time. Yeah, so she spent a total of 8 days in the NICU.
Wow.
And yeah, and which is really short compared to what a lot of the other families that were there were experiencing.
Yeah.
But it felt like an eternity still. But I always think back to my postpartum days too. I don't think I realized how much I was struggling during that time. I was just super uptight. I remember actually saying to my mom, when do I start to feel like myself again? And I didn't realize that wasn't entirely normal. Now that I've had other babies, I have had way more positive postpartum experiences than that one. But it was definitely tough, even in the days and months following.
Yeah. Going back to your delivery, when your nurse kind of froze, like, was she seeing blood, like, falling from your bed or
I
something?
think so. Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's just really scary. But then, like, seeing the nurse freeze is like, oh my gosh, that must have been like something was really going on.
Yeah, I don't even know at that point if I realized that something that major was going on.
Yeah.
I don't think it was until the doctor came running in and saying, pull the alarm, that I was like, really like, okay, this is not great.
Yeah. Was there any cause for the abruption or was it just spontaneous?
They they really don't know. Now, I've had hypertension in almost every single one of my pregnancies following this,
Mhm.
which hypertension can cause placenta abruption.
Mhm.
So my theory, which, is not much, but is that might have had some hypertension during that pregnancy as well that may have caused it. But they said typically it's, drug use and stuff like that would cause it. And, I didn't have anything like that. So
Yeah.
And how was your pregnancy up until that point? Was it fairly normal?
extremely, like, no issues whatsoever. I felt great. I had no warning signs of any problems at all.
Yeah. I'm glad you like caught it so early and they were like, just come on in. Um, because it seems like a lot of things already happened,
Yeah.
like by that
Yeah,
point.
they told me later that a lot of times, like when you have a placenta abruption, like a complete placenta abruption, you have around 2 minutes to save mom and baby.
Wow. Um, did you ever like have like or did any like nurses or doctors ever tell you that it could happen again?
Yeah, I mean, my chances go up. From a typical pregnancy, they say it's like 1% chance of it happening in a typical pregnancy. My chances are 10%. Um, but what they told me right from the get-go was, okay, yeah, you have a 10% chance of it happening again, but you also have a 90% chance that it won't happen again.
Yeah. Wow. How was your mental health like going into your next pregnancy?
Yeah, it was really, really tough. I felt pretty stressed just about the entire time. I was constantly checking for bleeding. They actually had me as a high risk pregnancy. I think mostly for my mental health. When I
Yeah.
actually went in to have my daughter, they admitted me mostly because of my mental health. They came in and like, yeah, you're scared, so we're gonna just keep you. But then I ended up having her the next day anyway. But
Yeah.
Did you, when you realized that you weren't feeling like yourself in your postpartum, did you start seeing a therapist or anything to work through?
no, I just really didn't realize that it was a problem at the time. I had no idea how you were supposed to feel in your postpartum. And I was one of I was young. I was 23. So not a whole lot of my friends or family members had started having babies yet. So I mean, I had my mom, but when you're so far removed from having babies too, it's a little bit different. But I didn't have a whole lot of my friends or family members to, ask any questions to see what's normal and what's not. So I just kind of wrote it. And, looking back is when I kind of realized, yeah, you probably should have gotten some help. Try to figure things out so I didn't have to suffer as much as I did for as long as I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there a point that you started feeling more like yourself or?
Yeah. I always kind of say it was around the year point. Right around there is when I started feeling both physically and mentally more like myself.
Mhm. Yeah. Did your daughter have to have any um, like surgeries right away or anything? Because I know you said that there was blood in her lungs.
Mhm. Yeah, she had blood in her lungs and in her stomach. So she had tubes down her throat that went through her throat into her stomach that pumped the blood out. She didn't have to have like any other surgeries, luckily. Um, and she they said she went, oh, I can't remember exactly how long they said like a minute or so without oxygen when she was first born. So we had to go back for 6 months after she was born to have her evaluated. And she came out completely clean, that there was nothing wrong with her. And, so we just feel super blessed by all that.
That's amazing. So great to hear.
Yeah. That sounds like such a scary experience for you. And then your husband too. Did he have any mental health issues after seeing all that?
I don't think so. I mean, he's never said that he has. And I feel like even like during our second pregnancy, he was always, encouraging me that, it's going to be okay this time around. So I don't know if that was just him being strong or if he truly felt good, but he was just always super positive. He's still like that. If anything comes up, always super positive, not really worried about anything.
That's nice. We have that. Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Really. Kind of like a random weird question. Did like they ever like tell you what your placenta looked like? Because like when they take it out, it's kind of like good thick thighs. I was just wondering if they ever.
No, I never heard anything of that. Because, like after a typical birth, they typically show it to you and stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, there that is. But yeah, I don't remember hearing anything about the condition of it or anything like that. Yeah, trying to think back. I mean, I can't remember them talking about it at all. I think that for the most part, they thought everything looked pretty healthy. So it's hard to say exactly what could have been wrong with it.
Yeah.
When did they tell you what happened? The abruption.
I don't think I heard exactly like the medical diagnosis until my postpartum visit, like 6 weeks later, because everything at the hospital was so crazy and I wasn't really thinking about anything like that. So I don't think it was until after I went in for that first doctor's appointment that I actually got some information about, what had gone down. We were mostly worried about, Quinn and what she was dealing with.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what kind of mindset, like, you guys plan your second, like, was it like, okay, we're mentally ready, like, let's start trying?
Yeah, it was almost like one of those things where I was like, because my mom wanted me to be done. She's like, I don't want to do that ever again. That was awful. So, but I knew, my husband and I both knew we wanted a big family. And, we have this 90% chance that this is never going to happen again. And I almost kind of felt like if I let this sit too long, then maybe I will never have any more babies. If I let myself think about it too long, I might never do it again. So we kind of decided, just jumping right back in there, starting it over again and seeing what happens, and, we both said, if it happens again, we're out for sure. But, my pregnancy with my second daughter was incredibly smooth and our delivery was amazing. So we've definitely felt better after that one.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you had a VBAC after that. What kind of, is that what you kind of wanted from the get-go, or was it like you got to choose between the two?
Yeah, I really wanted to do a VBAC. It was not a positive experience having a C-section that first time, especially. So I really wanted, to experience the birth as naturally as possible, especially after what we had gotten through. So yeah, that was kind of I was headstrong all along. Like, I want this VBAC. I want this VBAC. And, luckily I was able to get that. And I got that with, my second daughter and my third daughter.
That's amazing. That's so good to hear. Fairly easy pregnancies with both of them. You said that you kind of were sick in the beginning.
Yeah, I get some pretty rough morning sickness for the first 3 months or so. But once I get over that, every single pregnancy has been fairly easy. But yeah, especially with those two middles, those were my two easiest pregnancies, my second and my third. My third daughter was 9 pounds, 5 ounces at birth. But other than that,
oh, wow.
23 inches long also, but
oh my God.
Yeah. We had nurses coming in with like their measuring tape, measuring her like, yep, 23 inches. And they're like, this is the longest baby I've ever seen.
Yeah. I need to see a picture of her. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll definitely send you one.
Wow. I mean,
a girl.
Yeah. A lot of the times with VBACs too, did they allow you to go into labor naturally, or did they induce you?
I was induced both times. Mostly because, again, with my second pregnancy, I was starting to have some labor pains, and they knew my mental health wasn't super great. And so they were kind of just gave me that option when I was in there for the hospital, and I was like, yeah, let's take it. I don't want to go home. I was scared of what could happen if I went home. And then with my third daughter, it was mostly because of her size. They kind of predicted her being bigger, and they're like, we really don't want you to go too much longer. And so I was like 39 weeks with her. So I was farther along, but yeah, I ended up induced, and thank goodness I did, because who knows how big she would have came out.
Yeah, no kidding.
You don't look like a very tall person right now either, and I'm just wondering, how did you fit inside of it?
I'm 5'7", but but yeah, no, not super big, but I was huge. Absolutely huge.
23 inches. I just don't think I've ever heard anything over 20.
No, it's not very typical. Well, and she ended up with torticollis because she was so long, and she had her one foot was kind of curved in. So she actually had to go through some physical therapy to be able to, she had some trouble walking and stuff in the beginning. So she had to go through some physical therapy to be able to walk and stuff. She was 18 months old before she even pulled herself up to stand.
How long did she have to go through physical therapy to get it is it corrected now?
Yeah. She's clumsy, but yeah, it's clear. It's corrected. It was about a year of physical therapy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How was your fourth?
My fourth pregnancy was good. I ended up, my daughter was born on Valentine's Day. My husband and I had Valentine's Day planned. Well, we were going to go out to eat the day before, and, we were so excited. I tried to eat very small meals so that I could have lots of room to eat lots of food. And so we go to my doctor's appointment, and we were going to go out to eat right afterwards. We were so pumped. And I go in, and they told me my blood pressure was high, and I was going to go to the hospital. And I was like, no. So we called the place, and we're like, if you could, move our reservation back a little bit, we're going to be a little bit late. And, we ended up calling them probably 3 or 4 times until finally my husband had to call, we have to cancel. But yeah, I went in, and my blood pressure just was not going down. So they told me, we're going to do a C-section. And so that's when my C-section streak started back up. Yeah. But she ended up being a C-section. But other than that, it was a very typical C-section, which was nice because, what I was remembering, when they first told me I was going to have a C-section, my heart was like, I was really nervous. And so they, the whole experience was completely different. It was way more laid back. My husband was in there with me, And, I got to see my baby right away, which was a whole new experience as far as C-sections go for me. But yeah, it was a pretty typical C-section and delivery with her.
You were
That's
awake.
good.
What was that?
You were awake.
Yes, I was awake, just the whole, got to experience the whole thing, which was so much better.
Is there a reason that they wouldn't just try to induce you and let you?
With that one, I think what happened with that one was just because of how high my blood pressure was, that they just didn't feel comfortable with me doing the VBAC.
Yeah, with your history too, I could see.
Yeah, I think that was part of it too, the history and my blood pressure not acting nice.
How was your recovery physically?
It was way better, way, way better than with my first C-section. I think I think it was like a cleaner cut. They had time to do it, where the first cut, it didn't look as good as this one. So I had a lot easier of a time recovering. And definitely mentally, I had no mental issues that time around.
Yeah. And then your fifth?
My fifth. Yeah, I fought and fought and fought to have a VBAC with him. I wanted one so bad, and I thought I was going to get it. I found one doctor in the practice that kept telling me, I'm on your side. We're doing a VBAC. And, we got all the way down to the end, and she's like, they're not going to let you have a VBAC. I was like, what? Why? And she's like, your blood pressure has just not been, it's not been good, and they're not going to let you do it. So I ended up having a C-section with him as well. But probably, overall, it was probably my most positive. It was definitely my most positive C-section experience, going through it once and having those nerves calmed after my first C-section. I went into this one knowing that it wasn't going to be like the first one, which was nice. And, it was, they brought him right over to me, got to hold him, and, it was wonderful.
That's good.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel, I guess, like ready to go through it again? Or like, does your body feel ready? Like, I know that like scar tissue can kind of build up there. I guess I hope I'm like not prying too much there.
Oh gosh, no.
How you're feeling?
No, you can ask me whatever you want. I feel really good. The thing with the C-section scar area, it can still hurt.
Mhm.
Sometimes I say like if my pants hit it just right, I can really feel it. But yeah, I feel ready. I feel good. I mean, knowing that it's always kind of like a surreal thought, knowing that you're going to go through that again. The
Yeah.
C-sections are crazy. Your arms are pinned down, you can feel them cutting into you, not feel them cutting into you, but like your body's like jerking as they're cutting into you. And it's just a crazy feeling all around. So that's hard to get used to, that
Yeah.
thought that knowing you're going to be doing that again. But I feel like overall, physically, mentally, I feel like I feel ready and to do it for the last time. No more.
That's so amazing that you like feel so good. Like, I'm so happy to hear it, especially since you have a 1-year-old, your son's 1.
Yeah, he'll be 2 in September.
Okay. I'm like so amazed by you, like how you're pregnant with your 6. Like, I remember feeling so exhausted being pregnant with a toddler.
Yeah.
So kudos
I
to you.
take lots of naps.
Yeah, good.
Definitely need those naps.
Good. You deserve it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add from like any postpartum or pregnancies?
I don't know. I guess just that like it got progressively better every time. I guess like what you're saying, you can't imagine how I did it. But I always tell people it's not like I woke up one day and somebody handed me 5 kids. It was a progressive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I felt like after every pregnancy, after every birth, and after every delivery, it got progressively easier. Not just the postpartum, like mental health type of aspect, but just like feeling confident in raising these kids. Every time I felt like I was a little bit more equipped. And I with my fifth, I felt really good after having him. I felt really good, with him as a newborn, and even with having those 4 other kids running around. It was, I don't know, I just felt more confident. I've done this before, I can do it again, kind of an attitude. And with that first one, I feel like if somebody would told me after my first kid that I was gonna do this 5 more times, I'd be like, you're crazy. I'm never doing this again. But like now after my 5th kid, I was like, oh yeah, I could do it again. So I don't know. I guess it's just, it gets easier.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like that with my first too, just like watching my husband change the diapers, and I'm like over here like, can you show me how to swaddle again? Like,
Yes. My husband's that same way. He's the swaddler in the house. He knows how to do all that kind of stuff. I was like, hey, can you please swaddle the baby? I can always get it wrong, and it always looks sloppy when I do it.
break out of it right away.
Yeah. Yeah. He could get him in there nice and tight. I feel like I was always afraid of hurting him, where he's just like wrapping him up in there.
Yeah. And then with my second, well, we've skipped swaddles and just got the Velcro one. So like,
yes,
definitely more confident.
Yes, those are the best.
They are the best. We still have our daughter in her like Halo one from the hospital.
Oh yeah. Those are awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
Advice?
guys.
Yeah. Do you have like any advice for new moms or anyone struggling with their mental health?
Man, I would just say, if you just don't feel like yourself, look for help. Look, even if it's just like talking to a friend, talking to a family member, if you need extra help, get the extra help, because there's no sense in suffering through not feeling good, not feeling like yourself. It's not good for you. It's not good for baby or your marriage or any of that. Get help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for sharing your story. Like definitely our first time hearing. I've never heard about a placental abruption, so I'm so happy to like show awareness and give you your space to share your story because it's so important.
Yeah, no, it's definitely therapeutic in itself to share things like that because you don't always get a chance to tell people, those stories. So it was nice to have a space to do that.
Good. Well, amazing. So yeah, we will definitely link how people and listeners can connect with you on our Instagram. And if you have any questions, just hopefully Emily and the listeners can connect.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!